Flyers TV is sponsored by the Bay Hotel.
Hello, my name's Phil Green and welcome to Flyers TV. I'm standing outside the old barn, the home of the Fife Flyers, who on October 1st celebrate their 75th anniversary. I'm interviewing Allan, the editor of the Fife Free Press, to find out what their plans are for this historic year. So I'm here with Allan Crowe, who is the editor of the Fife Free Press. Allan, tell us a bit about what your plans for the 75th anniversary are.
Well, what we're doing just now is we're working on a supplement which will be the 75 greatest players of all time. It's never been done before, so you're going back through all the archives. Every single player who's played in the gold, white and blue is eligible to be a legend. So we're going to come out the anniversary week, which is early October. We will create a supplement which will be the 75 greatest players of all time. It'll be definitive, it'll spark debate because my top 10 and your top 10 will be completely different and both of them are completely valid. As part of it, we've also invited the fans to come up with their own greatest line ever. You know, a goalie, two defencemen and three forwards can be from any era, so you could have Kenny Horne playing next to Kyle Horne, you could have Les Lovell with Doug Smale, you could have anything. And we've been inundated with entries from that. And I can honestly tell you there are no two entries the same. Right. Which is brilliant, and we're still doing that just now. So we've got a wee group together, very informal. We started off with about 60 names, it went to 80 names. We now have 130 names on the long list. So the real challenge is taking that 130 names, removing 65, if my sums are right, and coming up with 75 names that are definitive, credible, and most of all avoids the sin of omission. That you print it and go, oh no, we forgot player X. So it covers from 1938 right up to the current day. So the real hard challenge for us now is to decide who goes where. Right. And also who is the greatest player of all time. That's the one that I genuinely don't know who that'll be. It'll be kept under wraps, nobody will see it until the day we print. And then we'll see the reaction we get.
Brilliant. You mentioned your top 10. Who would be a feature? Who would be in your top 10?
It's really hard to say. I mean, there are key people in Fife Flyers history. Guys like Pep Young. It would be unthinkable not to have him in there. I mean, what Pep did as a player, he came back, having been a player, he relaunched the Kestrels in effect in the 60s, 70s. Without Pep, Fife Flyers would really struggle to be in existence. He still comes to the games to this day. A remarkable man, an amazing career. He's one guy. You've got your Mark Morrisons, who were the Grand Slam era. You've got the previous Grand Slam era from the 40s, 50s, Al Rogers. You've got huge guys like Bert Smith, who was a mascot on the very first night as a child, went on to play for the club, became an Olympian. Jimmy Mitchell, they were the first players from Kirkcaldy to play for Fife Flyers. They've got to be in there somewhere. But how do you debate the merits of Bert Smith against John Haig, against Stephen Gunn, against Stephen McAlpine? It's a really subjective issue. And it's good fun because if you ask a bunch of hockey fans over a beer, I guarantee you 2 years later you would no closer to agreeing, because the answer is they're all relevant. So in my head there's a nominal top 10, but it'll be put out to the other guys that we're working with, and if they come back and say you missed somebody, I say, you're right, we have. And I genuinely don't know who'll be number one. I can't pick it. I know who I'd like it to be, of maybe 5 or 6 people. I'd like all 5 to be number one, but there's got to be a number one.
Sure.
And you've got to go all the way back to 1938, and that's a heck of a lot of players.
I'm here with Matthew Elder, who is the head of sport for the Fife Free Press Group. I just want to find out a bit about Matthew's top line, since he has been covering Fife Flyers for 9 years, is it?
9 years, yep.
Yeah. What about your goalie? Who would be your top goalie?
The memory's not actually as good as it probably should be, so I'm going to go with Brian Pitton, based on what I've seen last season. Garrick Zemlak, the season before, had a really good season, faced a lot of shots. But I think Pitton had a more rounded game, made some great saves, won Flyers a lot of points, and played quite a sweeper role for them back there as well. Swept up the puck behind his net, and the defence played confidently in front of him. So yeah, I'll go for Brian Pitton for the netminder, I think.
Excellent. Two defencemen?
Two defencemen, I'll pick another one from last season. I thought Derek Keller for me was one of the top offensive defencemen in the league. Created and scored a lot of goals for the Flyers. Great to watch going forward. A lot of speed, good skill, and can handle himself in his own zone as well. So we'll go for Derek Keller for defenceman number one, and for defenceman number two, I'll go back to, I think it was the BNL winning team in the first season I was covering the Flyers, and Greg Kuznick was a defenceman in that team. And as I say, the memory's not great, but thinking back to games, I remember Greg sort of being not quite an enforcer, but he was a guy you wouldn't mess with. Big guy, defended the blue line solidly, and you don't play in a title-winning team if you're not a good player. So we'll go for Kuznick for the second D-man.
Fantastic. What about your front attackers then?
For the forwards, I'll start with one of last season's again, Casey Haynes. Picked him as my Mirror of Merit winner for the season. Just an outstanding skater, incredible handwork, so skillful, and for a wee guy, very, very strong, mentally as well as physically. And he took a bad injury sort of towards Christmas time. Actually broke a bone in his ankle and continued to play through it. And although you could notice he wasn't the player that he was before his injury, he was still the best player in ice in most games. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about Casey. Second forward, I'll go for a current player and a player who's been there since I started covering the Flyers, and that's Todd Dutame. It was my first full season covering the team when Todd won the Mirror of Merit, and that was the season when I think he came back from quite a serious operation as well. So and he impressed me with his left wing he played in that season, and he impressed me with his speed. Again, he was a strong player in the corners, big defenceman, bigger than Todd. Couldn't get the puck off him. He would dig pucks out the corners, but he would also score really, really important goals. I remember one he scored, I think it might have been 5 or 10 seconds before the end of a match against Guildford, who were Flyers' biggest challengers for the title that season, if my memory is correct. I think that basically that goal went in and swung the title in Flyers' favour. And Todd was he's sort of touching 40 now, and maybe not the player he was back when I first started, but even now, if you look at some of his performances last season, he certainly contributed and is still certainly capable of doing a job at this level. Third skater's a tough one. There's a few guys I could have picked. Carrie Biette for me was a real strong player for the Flyers, someone you could really rely on to almost single-handedly win your games at times. If you were down in a match and you needed to camp in an opposition end and you needed somebody to win a face-off, Carrie Biette would win every face-off. You could guarantee him that. But I'm going to go with Dan Gonneau as the third skater. I'm sure he played in the title-winning BNL team as well. If not, it might have been the season after. I might need to be corrected on that, but I know that he is a player that stands out in the memory from watching him. I've never seen a player with that sort of speed and skill and just incredible ability at Fife before. He was one of the type of players who could go coast to coast, and that's like for one end of the rink to the other, almost effortlessly, and then put the puck in the top corner at the end of it. It was just incredible to watch at times. He was the type of player who didn't always turn up. He knew how good he was, and if you could have got the sort of effort out of him every night, he would have probably been. Well, I think he did play a few NHL games, but he was of that sort of standard where if he maybe applied himself a bit better, he could have been a real top player and earned big money at the sport. But certainly he stands out as being one of the real flashy forwards for the time I've covered the Flyers.
So we've just been talking to Matthew Elder about who would be in his top line from the time that he has been reporting on the Fife Flyers. Now it's your turn. In this museum there are lots of different names and different faces of people who have all represented the Fife Flyers. Now what we want from you is your favourite goalie, your 2 favourite defencemen and your 3 favourite forwards and your all-time Fife Flyer to be emailed into the Fife Free Press. The Flyers start their Elite League campaign this Saturday against the Cardiff Devils here at the Old Barn. Come down and show your support. I'm Phil Green and thanks for watching Flyers TV.